All right, Elena, explain to me how rocks are breathing.
That's actually not a terrible way to put it.
I'm serious. I read the paper. Potato-sized rocks at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean are apparently making oxygen without sunlight, without photosynthesis, without any living thing involved at all.
And when the scientists who discovered this first saw the data, they thought their equipment was broken.
For how long?
10 years.
I'm sorry, they ignored potentially the most paradigm-shifting discovery in marine science for a decade because they thought their sensors were glitching?
To be fair, what they were seeing was impossible. Every deep-sea study ever conducted showed oxygen being consumed at the seafloor, not produced. When your data contradicts literally everything science knows about how oxygen works, my equipment is broken, is actually the rational first assumption.
But it wasn't broken.
It wasn't broken. And now we're having conversations about whether we need to rethink the origins of life on Earth.
Welcome to Dark Oxygen, the impossible discovery 4 kilometers below the surface. I'm Marcus Chen.
And I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez. Today, we're diving, quite literally, into one of the strangest scientific discoveries in decades. We're talking about oxygen being produced in total darkness at crushing pressures by what appear to be geological batteries made of metal.
This story has everything. Stubborn scientists, corporate villains, international political intrigue, and the very real possibility that we fundamentally misunderstood how life might exist throughout the universe.
No pressure.
Was that a deep-sea pun?
I've been waiting the whole intro to use it.
Okay, let's start from the beginning. July 2024. What happened?
A team of international scientists, led by Professor Andrew Sweetman from the Scottish Association for Marine Science, published a paper in Nature Geoscience that essentially said, we found oxygen being produced 4 kilometers underwater in complete darkness, and we think rocks are doing it.
And the scientific community collectively said?
A mixture of, that's impossible, that's incredible, and are you absolutely sure your equipment wasn't broken?
Fair responses, honestly.
The discovery happened in a place called the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, which is this massive underwater region in the Pacific Ocean, stretching about 4,500 miles between Hawaii and Mexico. It's one of the most remote and pristine environments on the planet, an abyssal plain about 4,000 to 5,000 meters deep.
So we're talking about 13,000 feet underwater. No sunlight reaches that depth?
0. Sunlight penetrates maybe the top 200 meters of the ocean, and even then it gets progressively dimmer. By the time you're at 1,000 meters, you're in what we call the midnight zone, complete darkness. At 4,000 meters, it's been dark for longer than humans have existed.
And yet there's oxygen down there.
There is, but here's the thing. We always assumed that oxygen came from the surface. The ocean has this giant conveyor belt of currents that transport oxygen-rich water from the surface down to the deep. Cold water at the poles sinks, carrying dissolved oxygen with it. And this circulation system oxygenates the deep ocean over thousands of years.
So the deep ocean breathes, but it breathes borrowed air from the surface.
Exactly. And that's why Sweetman's discovery was so shocking. He wasn't just finding oxygen at depth, he was finding oxygen being actively produced. More oxygen coming out than going in. That's not supposed to happen.
Walk me through the actual experiment. How do you even measure oxygen production on the seafloor?
They use these devices called benthic chamberlanders. Imagine a box that lands on the seafloor and creates a sealed environment. It traps a section of sediment, water, and whatever's living there. Then you monitor the oxygen levels inside the chamber over time.
And normally?
Normally, oxygen goes down. Everything on the seafloor consumes oxygen. Microbes, worms, sea cucumbers, all the organisms breathing and decomposing organic matter. You put down a chamber, wait 48 hours, and the oxygen concentration drops. That's called sediment community oxygen consumption, and it's been measured thousands of times.
But that's not what Sweetman found.
He found the opposite. In some chambers, oxygen levels didn't just stay stable. They tripled over 2 days. More than 3 times the background concentration.
That's not possible.
That's exactly what Sweetman said. His first reaction in 2013 when he saw this data was, the sensors are faulty. So he went home, recalibrated everything, and went back out. Same result. Recalibrated again. Same result. This kept happening for almost a decade.
10 years of this must be an error.
Until 2022, when he decided to use a completely different measurement method alongside the oxygen sensors, optodes, that work on a different principle. When both methods came back with the same result, he finally said, okay, I can't ignore this anymore.
What made him so reluctant? I mean, if you're seeing something nobody's seen before, isn't that exciting?
It is, but you have to understand the weight of what he was claiming. Sweetman himself said, I was the worst critic of this paper for 10 years. I said, no, this is not possible, until I couldn't say no anymore.
When your data contradicts the foundational understanding of biology, that oxygen comes from photosynthesis, you'd better be absolutely certain before you publish.
Because photosynthesis is kind of a big deal. Just slightly. For the past 3 billion years, we've understood that oxygen on Earth comes from one source, organisms using sunlight to split water molecules. Cyanobacteria figured this out around 2.7 billion years ago, and it led to the Great Oxidation Event, the moment when oxygen started accumulating in the Earth's atmosphere and eventually made complex life possible.
Including us.
Including us. Every breath you take, every aerobic organism on the planet, exists because ancient microbes learned to photosynthesize. And now here's Sweetman saying, actually, rocks at the bottom of the ocean might be doing something similar, without any life involved at all.
No wonder people were skeptical.
The skepticism was intense, and honestly, it should be. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But Sweetman's team had 10 years of data from multiple expeditions, multiple measurement techniques, and multiple locations within the Clarion-Clipperton Zone.
So what's actually producing the oxygen? You mentioned rocks, but that's not quite right, is it?
It's not rocks in the traditional sense. It's polymetallic nodules, these strange mineral formations that litter the seafloor in certain areas. They look like potatoes or lumpy charcoal, ranging from tiny particles to chunks you could hold in your hand.
And they're made of what?
Metals. Lots of metals. Manganese, nickel, cobalt, copper, lithium. Basically a periodic table of valuable elements wrapped up in a geological package.
They form incredibly slowly over millions of years as dissolved metals in seawater?
Precipitate around a nucleus. Could be a shark tooth, a piece of volcanic rock, whatever is available.
Wait, shark teeth become metal batteries?
In a manner of speaking, yes. A shark tooth falls to the seafloor 10 million years ago, and over geologic time, layers of metal oxides build up around it, like tree rings. Each nodule is essentially a record of millions of years of chemical accumulation.
And these nodules are producing oxygen somehow?
That's the hypothesis. Sweetman's team found that when they enclosed areas with lots of nodules, oxygen increased. When they enclosed areas without nodules, oxygen decreased normally. The correlation was too strong to ignore.
But how? How does a lump of metal make oxygen?
That's where it gets really interesting, and also where the controversy starts.
All right, explain to me how a potato-sized rock becomes a battery.
So Sweetman needed help figuring out the mechanism. In summer 2023, he contacted Franz Geiger, a chemistry professor at Northwestern University who specializes in electrochemistry. He shipped several pounds of nodules from the seafloor to Geiger's lab.
You can just mail chunks of the deep ocean to Illinois?
Apparently so. Geiger had done previous work showing that rust, when combined with salt water, can generate small amounts of electricity. Sweetman wondered if something similar might be happening with the nodules.
And was it?
They measured voltage potentials on the nodule surfaces, and they found readings of up to 0.95 volts on individual nodules.
Is that significant?
Very. To split water into hydrogen and oxygen through electrolysis, you need about 1.5 volts, the same voltage as a AA battery. A single nodule at 0.95 volts isn't quite enough. But here's the thing. Nodules don't exist in isolation. They cluster together on the seafloor.
Like batteries connected in series.
Exactly. When you connect batteries in series, the voltages add up. If you have multiple nodules clustered together, the combined voltage could easily exceed 1.5 volts, enough to split seawater molecules into hydrogen and oxygen.
So these things are literally geological batteries?
Geiger's exact words were, "It appears that we discovered a natural geobattery." The different metal layers within the nodules, manganese oxides, nickel, cobalt, have different electrical charges. Electrons can flow between these layers. Seawater acts as an electrolyte. Put it all together and you have the basic components of an electrochemical cell.
That's actually kind of beautiful. Nature invented batteries before we did.
By about 10 million years, yes.
But here's my skeptic brain kicking in. If this process has been happening for millions of years, why haven't we noticed it before?
Several reasons. First, the Clarion-Clipperton Zone is one of the most remote and inaccessible places on Earth. Sending equipment down 4,000 meters is expensive and technically challenging. Most surveys use underwater drones that take photos. They don't sit there for 48 hours measuring oxygen flux.
So the method matters.
Enormously. Sweetman's team has done 54 benthic chamber experiments in this region. A Korean team has done 1, a French team has done 2. The sample size for this type of measurement is tiny because the equipment is rare and difficult to operate.
So we just haven't been looking properly.
Or looking in the right places. Sweetman has said that other scientists have contacted him since the paper came out, saying they also found strange oxygen readings they couldn't explain, but dismissed as errors.
The scientific community might have collectively ignored this for decades.
It's possible. Science is conservative by nature. When you see something that doesn't fit the paradigm, your first instinct is to assume you made a mistake. Usually, that instinct is correct, but sometimes you're looking at something genuinely new.
Okay, but there's controversy here too, right? Not everyone believes the geobattery hypothesis?
Correct. Some scientists are skeptical that the nodules produce oxygen when left undisturbed on the seafloor. The argument is that maybe the act of enclosing them in a chamber or disturbing them during collection triggers the oxygen production.
Like a stress response?
Sort of. One of the peer reviewers, Bo Barker-Jorgensen from the Max Planck Institute, said it does seem like the nodules produce oxygen through electrolysis, which is a genuinely novel observation, but he's not convinced this happens naturally without disturbance.
So the oxygen production is real, but the context is debated.
Right. And there's another layer of controversy, the funding source.
Oh no. Who funded the research?
Initially, the metals company.
The deep sea mining company?
The very same. TMC is one of the leading firms pushing to mine polymetallic nodules from the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. They funded Sweetman's research, and then, shortly after the paper was published, they withdrew their funding and publicly criticized the findings.
That's suspicious timing.
I'll let listeners draw their own conclusions about that.
So, what's Sweetman doing now?
He secured new funding from the Nippon Foundation in Japan, about £2 million, to conduct the most detailed investigation of dark oxygen ever attempted. The team is building custom landers that can descend to 12,000 meters, twice the depth needed to study the nodules. They'll also specifically test for hydrogen, which wasn't measured in the original research.
Why hydrogen?
Because if seawater electrolysis is really happening, you should get both oxygen and hydrogen. Finding hydrogen would be strong confirmation of the mechanism. The first expedition is scheduled to launch from San Diego in January 2026.
And Sweetman is confident?
He told New Scientist, "I know dark oxygen production is happening. We have found this now in 6 places. I know we are going to find it."
That's a bold statement for a scientist.
He's been fighting for this discovery for a decade. At this point, I think he's earned some confidence.
Let's zoom out and talk about where this is happening. You mentioned the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. Tell me about this place.
The CCZ is one of the most extraordinary environments on Earth, and almost no one knows it exists. It's an abyssal plain stretching about 4.5 million square kilometers, roughly the size of the continental United States, at depths between 4,000 and 6,000 meters.
So we're talking about an underwater region the size of America that most people have never heard of.
And it's teeming with life. When scientists first started seriously exploring the CCZ in the 2010s, they expected a barren wasteland. What they found was the opposite.
What kind of life survives at those depths?
Everything from tiny microbes to what we call megafauna, larger creatures you can see with the naked eye. Deep sea cucumbers with elaborate sails on their backs, ghostly white sea anemones drifting on currents with 2-meter tentacles, glass sponges that look like they're made of spun crystal, fish adapted to crushing pressure and zero light, polycate worms burrowing through sediment, isopods, amphipods, sea stars.
That sounds beautiful.
It is. And here's the shocking part. When researchers compiled the first comprehensive species checklist of the CCZ, they found over 5,000 species, and between 88 and 92% of them are new to science.
Wait, 90% of the species haven't even been officially described?
Correct. We've collected thousands of specimens from the CCZ, but only a few hundred have been identified to the species level. The rest are sitting in museums and labs waiting for taxonomists to examine them. We literally don't know what lives down there.
And the polymetallic nodules play a role in this biodiversity.
A crucial role. The nodules are essentially the only hard substrate in this vast, muddy plain. In an environment that's otherwise soft sediment, they provide something for organisms to anchor onto. About half of the megafauna in the CCZ is found exclusively on or near nodules.
So the nodules aren't just potentially producing oxygen, they're the foundation of an entire ecosystem.
Exactly. And this is why the dark oxygen discovery has such massive implications. If the nodules are producing oxygen that deep-sea organisms depend on, and then we remove those nodules through mining,
we potentially collapse the ecosystem's oxygen source.
Along with their habitat, yes. It's a double threat. The creatures lose their homes and potentially their air supply.
Let's talk about the mining. What's actually planned for this area?
The CCZ is managed by the International Seabed Authority, a UN body based in Jamaica, that regulates activities in areas beyond national jurisdiction. They've issued 19 exploration licenses to various countries and companies, covering about 1 million square kilometers.
Exploration, not extraction.
Not yet. The ISA has been developing the mining code, the rules and regulations for commercial extraction, for years. It's intensely controversial. At least 32 member states have called for a moratorium, a precautionary pause, or an outright ban on deep-sea mining.
What would the mining actually look like?
The proposals involve giant machines, essentially underwater vacuum cleaners that would roll across the seafloor, scooping up nodules and pumping them to ships on the surface. The sediment gets disturbed, creating massive plumes that can spread for kilometers. The nodules are gone, the organisms on them are gone, and the sediment that settles back down smothers whatever survived.
And how long does it take for the ecosystem to recover?
That's the terrifying part. Studies of areas disturbed by test mining decades ago show the sediment still hasn't fully settled. The nodules themselves take millions of years to form. If you remove them, you're not removing something that grows back in a human lifetime. You're removing something that accumulates over geologic time.
So this isn't like logging a forest where you can plant new trees.
It's more like mining the moon. Once it's gone, it's gone. At least on any timescale that matters for current life.
And the dark oxygen discovery adds another dimension to this.
It does. Franz Geiger, the chemist who helped identify the GEOBATTERY mechanism, specifically said, we need to rethink how to mine these materials so that we do not deplete the oxygen source for deep-sea life.
But do we even know how much oxygen these nodules produce? Is it significant for the ecosystem?
That's one of the big unknowns. The original paper showed oxygen increasing in chambers, but we don't have global production estimates. It could be ecologically trivial, a curiosity, but not a major oxygen source, or it could be essential for maintaining the oxygenated conditions that allow aerobic life in the deep sea.
And we won't know until someone studies it properly.
Which is exactly Sweetman's argument. He's not saying never mind. He's saying we discovered something unprecedented that we don't understand, and maybe we should understand it before we destroy it.
That seems reasonable.
You'd think so. But when there are billions of dollars worth of cobalt, nickel, and copper sitting on the seafloor, and companies have already invested heavily in extraction technology, wait and study becomes a controversial position.
Money versus science.
The eternal conflict.
Okay, let's step back from the mining debate and talk about the bigger picture. Why does dark oxygen matter beyond the CCZ?
Because it potentially challenges our understanding of how life works on this planet. The discovery of oxygen production without photosynthesis opens questions we thought were closed.
Like what?
Like where life could have originated. For decades, the standard story has been cyanobacteria evolved photosynthesis around 2.7 billion years ago, started producing oxygen, and after several 100 million years of that oxygen reacting with minerals and escaping into the atmosphere, we got the Great Oxidation Event around 2.4 billion years ago. This transformed Earth's atmosphere and made aerobic life possible.
And dark oxygen challenges that story?
It adds a complication. If geological processes can produce oxygen independently of biology, then maybe there were local oxygen oases in the early Earth before photosynthesis evolved. Maybe aerobic chemistry could have developed in certain environments while the rest of the planet was still anoxic.
You're saying life might not have had to wait for cyanobacteria to invent oxygen?
Potentially. Sweetman put it this way. For aerobic life to begin on the planet, there had to be oxygen, and our understanding has been that Earth's oxygen supply began with photosynthetic organisms. But we now know that there is oxygen produced in the deep sea where there is no light. I think we therefore need to revisit questions like, where could aerobic life have begun?
That's a profound reframing.
It doesn't overturn the importance of photosynthesis. That's still the dominant source of oxygen on Earth by a massive margin, but it opens the possibility of alternative pathways, alternative timelines, alternative environments for life's origins.
And this has implications beyond Earth, doesn't it?
That's where it gets really exciting. Think about the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, Europa, Enceladus, Ganymede. These are ocean worlds with liquid water beneath icy shells. No sunlight reaches those oceans.
So photosynthesis is impossible there.
Right. We've always assumed that life on these worlds, if it exists, would have to rely on chemosynthesis, organisms using chemical energy from hydrothermal vents, like we see at deep-sea vents on Earth. But if geological processes can produce oxygen independent of sunlight, suddenly the options expand.
The GEOBATTERY could work on other planets?
Theoretically, yes. If there are metal-rich nodules or similar structures on the seafloors of Europa or Enceladus, and if they interact with salty water in the same way, they could be generating oxygen right now.
oxygen without biology.
Which means larger organisms, not just microbes, but animals, could potentially survive in those dark oceans. Jeff Marlowe, one of the co-authors of the Dark Oxygen paper, said it directly. The fact that oxygen can be made independently of the surface world has a lot of exciting implications for the distribution of animal life, not only in Earth's oceans, but also potentially beyond our planet.
That's genuinely mind-blowing. We've been searching for biosignatures, chemical signs of life, in planetary atmospheres. Oxygen has always been considered a strong biosignature because we assumed it requires photosynthesis.
And now we have to reconsider. If oxygen can be produced geologically, then detecting oxygen on an exoplanet doesn't automatically mean life. It could mean geobatteries.
Does that make the search for life harder or easier?
Probably harder in terms of certainty. We need more context, more data, more understanding of abiotic oxygen sources. But it also means we shouldn't dismiss potential habitable environments just because they don't have access to sunlight. Dark oxygen expands the possible real estate for life in the universe.
NASA's paying attention to this, right?
Very much so. Sweetman mentioned that he's already in conversation with NASA experts who believe dark oxygen could reshape our understanding of how life might be sustained on other planets without direct sunlight.
Let's talk about the Great Oxidation Event for a minute. You mentioned it earlier. This was the turning point when oxygen became a major component of Earth's atmosphere. Can you give me the full picture?
Sure. Before about 2.4 billion years ago, Earth's atmosphere had almost no free oxygen. It was what we call a reducing atmosphere, dominated by nitrogen, carbon dioxide, methane, with only traces of oxygen. Life existed, but it was all anaerobic, organisms that didn't need oxygen and would actually be poisoned by it.
Then cyanobacteria showed up.
Right. Cyanobacteria evolved the ability to perform oxygenic photosynthesis, using sunlight to spit water molecules and release oxygen as a byproduct. For hundreds of millions of years, this oxygen was absorbed by minerals and dissolved metals in the ocean and atmosphere. Iron, sulfur, methane. All these oxygen sinks had to be saturated before oxygen could accumulate.
Like filling a bathtub with a slow leak.
Perfect analogy. Once all the sinks were filled, all the iron rusted, all the methane oxidized, oxygen started building up in the atmosphere. That's the Great Oxidation Event. And it was catastrophic for existing life.
Catastrophic?
Oxygen is toxic to anaerobic organisms. The GOE was essentially a mass extinction. We estimate the biosphere may have decreased by over 80%. Oxygen poisoned the world's existing inhabitants.
But it also enabled new life.
Exactly. Aerobic respiration is far more efficient than anaerobic metabolism. Organisms that could tolerate and then utilize oxygen had a massive evolutionary advantage. Eventually, this led to complex multicellular life, including animals, including us.
So we owe our existence to cyanobacteria and their oxygen waste product.
Every breath you take is possible because ancient microbes polluted their own environment so thoroughly that it became ours.
And dark oxygen suggests there might be other pathways to oxygenation.
Potentially. If metal-rich minerals can produce oxygen through electrochemical processes, maybe some of that early oxygen didn't come from biology at all. Maybe geochemistry played a bigger role than we realized.
Does this change our estimate of when life could have arisen?
It opens questions. If aerobic environments could exist locally before the GOE, for example in certain deep-sea locations, then aerobic organisms might have evolved earlier than we thought, even if they were restricted to those isolated oases.
Life finding a way in unexpected corners.
That's kind of the theme here, isn't it? Dark oxygen is ultimately a story about life being more creative, more resilient, and more surprising than our models predicted.
Let's address the elephant in the room. Not everyone believes this discovery. What are the main criticisms?
There are several legitimate scientific concerns. First, as we mentioned, some researchers question whether the oxygen production happens naturally or only when the nodules are disturbed. And closing them in a chamber, handling them during collection, these activities might trigger chemical reactions that wouldn't occur if the nodules were left undisturbed.
So the measurement might create the phenomenon.
Possibly. That's why the upcoming expedition will use specially designed landers to minimize disturbance. They want to measure conditions as close to natural as possible.
What other criticisms are there?
The hydrogen question is a big one. If seawater electrolysis is happening, you should produce both oxygen and hydrogen in a 1-to-2 ratio, 2 hydrogen molecules for every oxygen molecule. The original paper didn't test for hydrogen. Critics argue that without detecting hydrogen, you can't confirm electrolysis is the mechanism.
Fair point. What else?
Some scientists have proposed alternative explanations. Maybe microbes are producing the oxygen through previously unknown metabolic pathways. Sweetman's team did test this by poisoning seawater with mercury chloride to kill microbes. Oxygen levels still increased. But critics argue the poison might not have killed everything, or there could be non-living biological remnants contributing.
And then there's the funding issue.
The metals company connection is awkward. TMC funded the research, then criticized it publicly. That creates an uncomfortable dynamic, regardless of whether the science is sound.
Does that taint the research?
Not inherently. Lots of industrial research leads to legitimate discoveries. But it does raise questions about publication timing, framing, and whether there was pressure to present findings in certain ways. Sweetman has been transparent about the funding source, which is the ethical standard.
He also secured independent funding for future research.
From the Nippon Foundation, yes. That separates the upcoming work from mining company interests, which should help establish credibility.
What about the response from the scientific community overall?
It's been mixed, but mostly positive. Lisa Levin, a distinguished professor at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, called it an excellent example of what it means to have the deep ocean as a frontier. She emphasized that there's still new processes to discover that challenge what we know about life.
But not everyone is convinced.
No. Bor Barker Jorgensen, who peer-reviewed the paper, remains skeptical about natural production. He acknowledged the electrolysis observation is novel and interesting, but he's not ready to accept that it's an ongoing geological process.
Science doing what science does, demanding evidence.
Exactly. And that's healthy. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Sweetman's team made a bold claim. Now they need to back it up with more data, better controls, and reproducible results from independent groups.
What would it take to definitively prove dark oxygen?
Several things. First, detecting hydrogen alongside oxygen would strongly support the electrolysis mechanism. Second, measuring voltage potentials on nodules in situ, on the seafloor, undisturbed, would show the GEOBATTERY is active naturally. Third, replicating results in other nodule-rich areas around the world would demonstrate this isn't unique to the CCZ.
And if all that happens?
Then we've discovered a new geological process that produces oxygen on Earth, and we have to rewrite textbooks.
Textbook rewriting is a high bar.
Which is why Sweetman has been fighting for this for over a decade. He knows what's at stake.
Let's talk about what happens next. Sweetman's expedition launches in January 2026. What are they hoping to find?
The primary goal is to definitively prove or disprove the GEOBATTERY hypothesis. They'll use custom-built landers with specialized instrumentation to measure oxygen, hydrogen, and voltage potentials simultaneously. They'll deploy sensors at multiple depths, including the Hadal Zone, the deepest trenches below 6,000 meters.
Why the Hadal Zone?
To see if dark oxygen production occurs at even greater depths. If it's happening in the CCZ at 4,000 meters, is it also happening in trenches at 11,000 meters? That would tell us something about the range and distribution of the phenomenon.
The UK is building new deep-sea capabilities for this?
Yes, the landers being developed will be the first UK-based assets capable of sampling below 6,000 meters. That's significant. It puts Britain in a position to conduct research previously only possible for a handful of nations with advanced submersible technology.
What about the mining debate? Where does that stand?
The International Seabed Authority continues negotiating the mining code. There's intense pressure from companies like TMC to start extraction, and equally intense pressure from conservation groups and some member states to delay until we understand the ecosystems better.
And dark oxygen adds a new dimension to that debate.
Absolutely. If the nodules are producing oxygen that deep-sea life depends on, mining isn't just removing habitat, it's removing a metabolic resource. That's a different kind of harm than we previously understood.
What's your personal view on deep-sea mining?
I think Sweetman put it well. I don't think this research should be seen as a nail in the coffin for deep-sea mining. There may be certain instances where deep-sea mining is needed to transition to a greener economy. But what the research shows is that we need to potentially consider this process as well as other things when deciding how to mine, where best to mine, and how long to mine for.
A measured response.
The reality is that we need these metals for electric vehicles, renewable energy storage, electronics. The question is whether deep-sea mining is the right way to get them, or whether land-based mining and recycling can meet our needs. That's a policy question as much as a scientific one.
But science should inform the policy.
That's the hope, and dark oxygen is a perfect example of why you need to do the science first. We almost industrialized an area without knowing that the rocks produce oxygen. What else might we not know?
Let's end on the big picture. If dark oxygen proves real and significant, what does it mean for humanity?
It means the universe is more hospitable than we thought. It means life might find ways to survive and thrive in places we never imagined. It means the deep ocean, which covers more than half our planet and remains largely unexplored, still has fundamental secrets to reveal.
And it means we should probably be careful about destroying ecosystems we don't understand.
That too. There's a concept in environmental ethics called the precautionary principle. When you don't understand the consequences of an action, err on the side of caution. Dark oxygen is a perfect case study. We discovered something nobody expected in a place we thought we understood that changes basic assumptions about how oxygen works. What else might we not know?
Exactly. Sweetman himself said, like the discovery of hydrothermal vents, cold seeps, organic falls, and benthic storms, all relatively recent, the discovery of polymetallic nodules potentially producing oxygen by seawater electrolysis may reshape our understanding of not only deep-sea ecosystems, but of life on Earth. The deep ocean as a frontier.
The last frontier on our own planet, and we're only beginning to map it.
Elena, this has been incredible. Final thoughts?
I think the dark oxygen story teaches us humility. We've spent 3 billion years on a planet we still don't fully understand. The deep ocean has been there the whole time, covering most of Earth's surface, and we're just now discovering that rocks can breathe. What does that say about what else we might be missing?
It says we should keep looking.
And keep asking questions even when the answers seem impossible.
On that note, thank you all for listening. I'm Marcus Chen.
And I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez. Until next time, remember, just because something seems impossible doesn't mean it's not happening 4 kilometers below your feet.
That's either inspiring or terrifying.
Why not both?